I hated them because my family loved them and I wanted to pick my own team. And this is what happens when you have an obnoxious fan base.
Right.
And so the first time I met Darren, I was actually a PA at ESPN and I was prompting SportsCenter and he came on to do a segment and I saw him and I was like, ugh, instantly I'm like,
Was I doing my Deion dance when I walked out?
And I looked at him. I don't remember if it was after your segment or before, but I went up and I introduced myself and I was like, I just want you to know I really don't like you. And he was like, what?
That was the first thing you said to him? I love it.
I'm telling you, I was appalled by it.
Really don't. And he kind of laughed and was like, okay, like why? And I told him about my family and he was like, so you're the dumb one in your family. And I was like...
So this topic today of what was said by, you got to correct me on the name.
No, I want you to try it first.
Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
That was pretty good.
There it goes, right?
Yeah.
So Ibrahimovic had one of the world's best soccer players, made a comment about LeBron James today. And he said LeBron should stick to what he does best, and that's playing basketball. And I want you to start this off by reading what was said from Zlatan.
He is a phenomenal. I can't even read. He is phenomenal in what he's doing, but I don't like when people have some kind of status and they do politics. I play football because I'm the best in playing football. That is the first mistake people do when they become famous and they come in a certain status. Stay out of it. Just do what you're best at because it doesn't look good.
See, now we've spoken on this topic in the past.
Yeah, we touched on it.
And today's guest is a really good friend of mine. We go way back, and she does not hold back, has never, ever held back. Like, we get into arguments specifically about her Green Bay Packers, but we argue about every damn thing. Today's guest is Liz Gonzales. And Liz is you've seen Liz on Barstool. How many shows? There's like 3 or 4 different shows.
She's everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
XM, was it XM radio
Sirius
show?
XM.
Sirius XM. So give us the names of the shows real quick so we don't just...
So there was Wine Walk. I host our Barstool Snapchat show. Yep. I did our flagship Barstool radio show back when it was Dave, Kevin, and myself. What else do I do? I'm everywhere. Everywhere.
You're all on.
Just name every show, and she's been on.
And she's been on the show. Yeah. So she's a superstar on Barstool and the whole deal.
That might be a gross exaggeration, but carry on.
Anywho, so Liz, this is a topic that again we spoke on this months ago, and we disagreed partially on some of it, but I want your perspective on should athletes just dribble? Should athletes just stay in their lanes when it becomes to political issues or social issues? Should they just stay in their lanes?
Absolutely not. In no way. I don't know if you agree with me on this, Darren. No, I think so if you see something happen, you shouldn't say anything because you're not properly justified or trained in that area.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. People are given the privilege of a platform and you should use it. And likewise, the idea of politics not being a part of your life, it is a part of all of our lives because guess what? Politics literally involve and designate our lives.
Yes.
So the idea of it doesn't belong and you stay in your lane, it is literally our lane.
Doesn't it seem like this topic is so outdated?
It doesn't make sense. Like, how are we still here?
Absolutely. Yeah. So not only that, but then I was thinking about, I read through it, and you guys know me, I'm rarely on Instagram, but I was reading through this, and I'm thinking, just think about the pioneers. Like, just think if someone would have told Muhammad Ali, just stay in your lane. Just think if someone would have said to Bill Russell, hey, man, don't worry about all that. You just dribble the basketball. You don't have to march and be a social activist. I mean, the list goes on and on. Jackie Robinson, one of the greatest baseball players ever, he stood up. They told him to take his black ass to the back of the bus specifically, and he said, no, man, not doing it. Yeah. There's so many great athletes. I'm not just talking about athletes, but in general, people that took a stance and used their voice and their platform for greatness and took it on the chin took beatings and got, yelled at, screamed at, and ostracized. I just in today's time, it's a shame to see these type of comments come and try to basically quiet someone's voice. Mm-hmm. Like LeBron James, I don't care what it is. If he's speaking on it, if he has the platform and feels that he's rightfully so to speak on it. And I think that's a part of it that just really irked me. So I wanted to start off with that. I wanted to get your point of view because I was hoping you were going to come the opposite way so we could argue again, but evidently.
No, because you know
we're
what?
In alignment.
And maybe this is one of the few times, this might be the only time we agree with each other on this podcast, so enjoy while it lasts. No, but also part of the reason and really the problem with this is that we've politicized a lot of things that should have nothing to do with politics. Yeah. The way people are treated and the opportunity people are given should not be a political issue, shouldn't be a left or a right platform that needs to take a stand. It is our job as human beings to treat each other as human beings.
Yeah. True. So true.
Yeah, the game's changed. That is a very old school mentality of, hey, I'm just going to stay out of it. I'm going to do what I do. And maybe I didn't see the quote. I mean, I just read the quote. So I don't know how he said it. I don't know the context he said it. Maybe he was just giving advice and that, hey, it's just not worth the headache to try to jump in that. But that doesn't mean what you guys are saying is wrong or right. I disagree. I actually totally agree with what y'all are saying. Who knows? Maybe that's what he was just trying to say was, hey, it's just not worth the headache. But
that's also horrible advice.
Exactly.
It's
and to
always
your point,
Darren,
Darren, it's like, well, if Muhammad Ali hadn't spoken up, or all these people that made change, if they had never spoken up because they wanted to be quote unquote comfortable.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Then where would we be?
You said all the time, you got to be disruptive.
Yes.
It's not comfortable to be disruptive.
It's not, man. And that's the thing is that's what inspires me about these young athletes is that they're being disruptive and they don't care what people think. And that's the only way you have gains in life is that sometimes you got to say some things or feel a certain way or take a stance for things to change.
Right.
So,
and you know what else is interesting is if you agree with somebody, oh yeah, speak up, say it, keep saying it. If you disagree, just stay in your lane, dude.
Right.
You need to quiet down.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be unpopular.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So we're with Liz Gonzales and we briefly went over it, but Liz is again, the famous Barstool, which I've known this girl. She's like my little sister. I've known her for so long and I've seen her grow over the years. But Liz, we want to start just with your story. You want to talk about the journey. And on this show, we always talk about, going back to your childhood and how your family dynamics and how you were raised and your dreams. And that's where we want to start. We want to start with, growing up. Where'd you grow up and what was the family life like?
Well, I'll start that by talking about how you and I met, because I think he doesn't want to say exactly how we met because it's a shameful story on your end, sort of.
What did I don't remember.
No, be quiet.
Damn.
Mute his mic. Mute his mic. I want to hear this.
What the heck did I
Not
do?
shameful, but we met with my insulting you. Do you remember that?
Was it about the Packers? Or
it was about my
Okay.
hatred for the Cowboys. As growing
I just
up
met
in
you from
Fort
Liz.
Worth.
I already love you.
I remember and lived in Dallas, and I couldn't
Fort
believe
Worth,
it. I was
not
like,
Dallas.
I was appalled when she said it. I was so hurt. You like green and not the star. Well, go ahead. You tell the story then.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, growing up in Fort Worth, especially in the '90s, where it was the boys will be boys era, and
kicking some ass.
Yeah. That whole scene. My family, die-hard Cowboy fans. I mean, obnoxious, annoying. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you admit they're obnoxious and annoying.
What's your uncle's name right there?
Myron.
Shout out to Myron. What's up, homie?
But, yeah, so I hated them because my family loved them, and I wanted to pick my own team, and this is what happens when you have an obnoxious fan base.
Right.
And so the first time I met Darren, I was actually a PA at ESPN, and I was prompting SportsCenter, and he came on to do a segment. And I saw him, and I was like, ugh. Instantly, I'm like,
Was I doing my Deion dance when I walked out?
And I looked at him. I don't remember if it was after your segment or before, but I went up and I introduced myself, and I was like, I just want you to know I really don't like you. And he was like,
That was the first thing you said to him? I love it.
Tell you, I was appalled by it.
Really don't. And he kind of laughed and was like, okay, like why? And I told him about my family, and he was like, so you're the dumb one in your family. And I was like, or the smart one, the only smart one, but that's how
So just immediately the gloves were off.
Oh, they were off,
That was
brother.
it.
We were brawling.
I love it.
was
It's
it.
a lot like
Day
the
one.
first time I met you, and I said I thought I was getting to train Charles Woodson.
Yeah, see, you know what? You watch your mouth. See, that's another Packer. You
Ex-Packer.
ready for that
Yeah.
There's
Packer?
two
You want to do
safeties with the last name Woodson that are better than you, sir.
that? See, you hear this? This is what I deal with, Liz.
Just waiting for the day he'll be our defensive coordinator. That's all.
The
better Woodson, I
No,
would
he's
say.
not. No,
Yeah.
he's not. He's not going to do it. Okay, so start.
Anyway.
So go back. Let's go to the childhood. And what was that like growing up in was it Arlington or Fort Worth?
Fort
right?
Worth.
In Fort Worth, Texas.
Why can't you say Fort Worth?
Because
It's always putting
it's
me
like
in
funky
Dallas,
town.
Arlington. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Funky
It's
town.
because it's a funky. There's a reason they call it
Funk,
funky
baby.
town.
So I am a first generation Mexican American. My mom came to the States when she was around 19 and was a worker. I don't really know my father, so it was she, big time single mom working 7 days a week, that whole thing. Fortunate that she was one of 10, or is one of 10. I'm sorry, one of 10 kids. So I had a lot of aunts and a lot of uncles to keep me in check. Was definitely not treated like an only child growing up, and I lived with them for a while. So it was my grandma, my grandpa, all 10 kids.
In the
and
one
myself,
house?
in the one 2-bedroom
Good
house. It was
night.
2 bedrooms for a long time. No privacy. So always all up in each other's business. Very loud. We're Mexican. We're very loud. It's just how we do things.
I didn't know that. I would have never have guessed.
No, don't say. You met my uncle.
Yes, I did.
And in the summers and during Christmas break, my 2 cousins from Houston would come up and stay there. So then you tack on 2 more people.
Good night.
So we grew up talking, eating, and always around each other.
Is that where you think you sharpened your skills? Like, cause you're the
Fighting with them?
I was
Yeah.
gonna say you got to
Yes.
stand out amongst 12 other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We would get in arguments, football arguments, all the time.
So what about school? How were you in school? Was it pretty easy for you? Was there a struggle growing up as far as your the academics at all?
Not really, actually. I was fortunate in that department. I moved schools a lot when I was little because I went to a bunch of like public schools, and mom was trying to put me in a situation. We weren't in the best neighborhood, so she was trying to figure out a way to keep me out of trouble and what school would give me, the better chance. And eventually, she ended up taking out a loan and sending me to a very, very small Catholic school in Fort Worth, and so that kept me out of trouble, I would say, and out of everything, what I'm talking about,
Right.
and like all the shit that happens like in neighborhoods, and so I wasn't exposed to a lot of it in school for that reason.
So was the neighborhood? Was it like
The hood?
Was it? Were you in the hood?
The emphasis on the hood. I love
Okay,
it.
so did you know? Okay, this is a question I do have for you. Did you know you were poor back then?
Well, it's funny because when you're a kid, that's really all you know.
Right.
So it's hard for you to compare. And I didn't have, growing up, I didn't have wealthy friends until really middle school. And I remember going over to a friend's house and being like, wow, like, look at all this like food they have. And they had like,
You said
went
that
through the same
exact
thing.
same thing.
did you say the same?
Oh my God!
Right?
This dude had ding dongs in his.
Yeah.
I was like, what in the
Roll-ups.
real cereal that this wasn't a yellow box that said cereal on it.
yeah.
You're like Captain Crunch. I had to spell it out.
Cheerios.
Captain Crunch. What in the hell?
Cocoa, nibs or something.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? So it's like, oh shit. Because I wasn't allowed to go to the grocery store with my mom.
Why?
Because I always wanted too many things. And eventually it would turn into a fight where I would be like, but it's only $2. And she's like, right, but I don't have an
Right,
extra $2.
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but it's only $2.
Right.
So eventually she stopped taking me to the grocery store with her and would leave me at my grandma's. And she would
so-
come, she'd pick me up and she would have grocery, and I'd be so pissed.
You know what my mom used to
So
say?
mad.
We used to go to the grocery store. She says, you know what? So don't ask for shit because you ain't getting shit. So you can stay in the car. We used to sit in the car. That's
Damn, at least my mom left me at my
115
grandma's.
degrees in
Yeah.
Arizona. Just
Don't
stay
ask
in
for
the car.
shit because you ain't getting shit. I heard that early on. I was like, I ain't going in then. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was always a fighter. I was a person. I'm like, oh, I won't ask for anything, but in my head, I'd be like, okay, but maybe I can con her into a chocolate bar or whatever.
right.
Big arguments, big fights, and
So-
then I'd create a scene. So
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to go to the grocery store.
So did your mom? I'm sure everyone in your family, all 15 that was in the house, they probably thought you were going to be an attorney or something because you argued so well. Was there something in mind that you wanted to do at a young age?
When I was really young, I wanted to be a vet. But then I soon realized that dogs die when you're a vet, and you have to see it because obviously that happens. And I'm like, I'm out. I'm totally out of that. But that was what I wanted to be for a long time because I loved animals. And then I think as I started getting older, sports, it was the idea of do what you love. And I'm like, well, this is like what I do and what my family does. Like we would watch football all day. It's what we did.
So were you playing any sports as well, or
Hell
was it
no.
just
Really?
I was so unathletic.
Yeah. So what was it about sports then that if you didn't play it, why were you so drawn to it?
I think it's the family that it was like the one time that, that we all sat down for the same mission. Even if we were against each other, it was like you gather around, you talk about it, you have arguments about it. It brings you together. There's something in common, even, despite the age differences. Because I have an aunt that's 5 years older than me, but for the most part, it was, from 5 all the way to 15. But there's the one thing that kind of unifies you.
Mm-hmm.
So was it just football? Because I know football, you could talk circles around my ass in football, but was it just football, or was it basketball, baseball? What were the other sports that
Basketball, I never watched growing up, ever. That's also why I know very little about college and the NBA because I never connected to it. And we would go to baseball games. We'd go to Rangers games at the old ballpark although they're building a new ballpark too, aren't they?
It's already
Just got
finished.
done.
Oh, it's already
Yeah.
It's
It's
a cool.
finished?
Yeah, it's a really
they played
cool
in it
area.
Actually, they played the World Series in it last year.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I just haven't seen it in person. I haven't been here in
Was
so
it
long,
Minute Maid?
obviously.
What
Yeah.
is it? What is
No, it was still Globe Life, but they've got a whole retail restaurant. I mean, it's a cool
nice.
they call it Rangers or
That's right.
Texas Live is what
Texas
they call
Live.
it. Yeah,
Yep.
so it's a cool.
Yep. Globe
Yeah.
Life. That's
Wow,
right.
yeah. I haven't seen that. It's been a bit, but yeah. So we used to go to Rangers games, and there was actually a period there where we went to hockey games because my stepdad's company had tickets. So this was back when the Dallas Stars were, and I actually don't know anything about hockey anymore either. But back then I used to follow them, and that was during the year that they won the Stanley
The
Cup.
McDonough years.
Darren
Hatcher. Yeah, they were
circa
man.
like 98, 99.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about work ethic because to get to where you are takes an insane work ethic. You talked about your mother working 7 days a week. What did she do? What did she show you? What was that like growing up, just from a work ethic standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, shout out my mom for sure. I learned not to complain about working hard right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Because there was no, it was always, I have the privilege of being able to work this much. Other people aren't,
That's good.
So she worked all the time. I think I resented it a bit when I was younger because obviously I didn't spend, a lot of time with her as she was working so much. But she worked at when the moment she came to the States, she started working at a meat packing factory, and she did for years and years. That was her job. She was quality control at the time was Standard Meat Packing. And I think at some point it was bought out by several different companies, and then Tyson ended up buying them out, and that was in maybe the last 15 years or so. She worked in a freezer all day, and nobody hates the cold more than my mom. So
That's
She
a
ain't
big
going
change.
back to that, huh?
Yeah.
hell no. Now it's like she did it; it's done.
Yeah. But let's pull on that a little bit because, and we talk about this all the time. Wherever you are, because I can't imagine she dreamed about being in a meat packing plant, but she did it because she knew she had to. That's got to rub off on you growing up, knowing the sacrifice she made and going and showing up, doing something maybe she didn't enjoy, but doing it to provide for me. What sort of impact did that make on you?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially, and for her, she has a 5th grade education.
Oh.
So she always pushed school on me for that reason. She's like, I don't want to see you working at a meat packing factory when you grow up. So education was never an option. And so maybe that's why it almost, I wouldn't say came naturally, but there was no other, I never had a thought in my head of college is not an option. It was always just like, this is what, and I was the first person in my family, I guess second, sorry, to go to college. So it was not something that was common, but you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right, well, like that's exactly what it's going to be. And she, credit to her, man, she
Seriously.
Worked. Yeah.
That's awesome.
really, really impressive. And to this day, she said that, in Mexico, beyond 5th grade, you have to pay. there's no free education.
Oh, really?
Or at the time, anyways. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but at the time, definitely.
So they weren't public schools back then? I mean, you actually paid to go to school for
You had to
education?
pay. There were public schools till 5th grade, and then on the little ranch as she grew up, there wasn't any other. So you have to go to the city to go to 6th grade and beyond, and pay, and then also the bus fare to get there and all this stuff. And like she grew up very, 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 very poor. No electricity, no running water. I mean, all this stuff. So there was zero shot that was it. You're done, and only 5th grade because it was there and available. Right. But she was a little nerd when she was young, and she really wanted to go to school, and it didn't happen.
Wow. So you were in high school. What school did you go to in
Pascal?
Pascal.
Shout out Pascal Purple Panthers.
Fort Worth Pascal. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
Do they even have a football team? I'm just asking.
Yes, they do.
I
As a matter of fact,
I think they're 0 for the last 10 years, but they're.
Excuse me, we won like 2 games when I was in high school. Thank you very much.
I'm not taking a shot at Pascal. I just want to ask a simple question.
2 games is not nothing, okay? It may have been 3 too.
Don't shortchange us.
So you went to
We're in a hard district playing Arlington Lamar. I mean, come on, give us credit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
8-man. Okay, so you you went to school. So in high schools, what's the thought process of going to college? Were you your freshman, sophomore year? Were you thinking, okay, I'm going to go to college. This is what I want to do. Was there a game plan on what you wanted to do in life?
I don't think I ever really, looking back on it too, I don't even think that I necessarily wanted to go to college. It was just like, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
And I fell in love with New York when I was young. And then but I visited for the first time when I was a freshman in high school. And I'm like, I'm going to school here. Mm-hmm. And so it was just like, that's just what's going to happen. So in the end, I applied to NYU and Columbia, rejected from both. Mm-hmm. And I ended up at Texas, which I grew up a Longhorn, so that was still a little acceptable, I would say.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's still a better school than I could ever get into, so.
You both.
Yeah.
So at Texas, what was life like at Texas?
I loved high school. I had a blast in high school and made my best friends were from high school. In college, I had a lot of fun my freshman year and did,
The usual.
partied a ton and
Yeah.
no underage drinking, of course.
No,
Right.
none.
No, just we don't do that. We don't do that. Had a lot of fun, and then I was kind of over it by my sophomore year, and that's when I figured out like a game plan to, I guess, exit in a certain way. So then I studied abroad, first semester of my junior year.
Okay, where'd you go?
To Italy.
Okay.
The program put me. I was in Florence for 3 weeks and Rome for about 4 months.
Wow.
And I will say though, worth mentioning certainly, when I was there was the Rose Bowl against USC.
Yeah,
so had a pretty good. Let's not forget about something very important there. That very important piece to the puzzle. Vince Young in the Rose Bowl against USC, and Reggie Bush, who stole his Heisman.
Your team. USC, even though you went to a different school, Darren.
Yeah. So I watched the wine episode with Reggie.
Yeah, he wasn't too happy with me.
Yeah, and I would, you know what? And I almost took offense to your attitude. And if you're listening, you got to go on. How do they find that episode with you?
Just type in Barstool.
called YouTube.
BarstoolSports.com.
Yeah, but I just want to be specific.
Wine
here.
walk Reggie Bush.
But I'm watching this and I'm like, that's uncomfortable. That was that's one of the things that I want to eventually get to is like, you don't mind being in that place of uncomfortability. And it speaks to you individually because you're at University of Texas, which was if you live in Texas, it's hard as hell to get in that school, one. And then you travel abroad, and this is something you're doing alone by yourself. So where does that come from? I mean, you're okay with being in an uncomfortable setting. Is that the way you were brought up, or is that something that you just strive to do?
I'm actually not sure the answer to that question. I don't care what people think, and I genuinely don't. And I think that that's a good thing and also a bad thing, because there should be some sort of level of, especially in my industry, and it doesn't matter. So there's a lot of things that I maybe don't go out of my way to do that other people do, just because I don't want to do it. And I'm not going to do it just to please the public or whatever the case may be. So there's a good and bad element there. But the good part certainly is that I've always kind of done what I wanted to do and figured out a way to do it.
Right.
Very much the mentality of there's no such thing as no. If I was studying abroad, for example, I took out a loan. There was no money for me to do it. I'm like, I'll take out a loan. I'll figure it out. Very much like I'll figure it out.
Right.
It's kind of, I guess, my life anthem there.
Yeah.
And there's no, for better or for worse, there's no fear of failure. Because maybe it's a spiritual thing, but I don't believe in mistakes. So I very much am of the mindset of, if I get there and it doesn't turn out the way I think it's going to, or the way I hope it's going to, it'll turn out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, right. And you know what's so special about that? That's a great way to look at it. What's so special about that, Liz, is this. And I'm going to give you a little love. I'm going to give you a little love on this one.
Are we recording? Can we make sure?
The mics are about to explode here.
But most people that go, like, when you look at those that study abroad, most of those people usually have something to fall back on because they've had some financial support or family support in that process. It wasn't like you had that financial support. Maybe you had the family support, but you didn't have, like, you wanted to go do this and no one was cutting checks for you to go do that. And that's, to me, that speaks to who you are, because I've seen the progression of your life. And I want everyone to learn, and especially young women that are out there, to hear your story, because there's so many ups and there, these downs and these things that you did in your life, you had to go do in your life that was like, shit, it was on you to do it. So you graduate from college. What's the next step after that? What did you want to do after college?
I wanted to be a sports reporter.
Yeah.
And I had no experience. And I actually so right out of college, I started waiting tables. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to save some money, figure out what it is that I want to do, come up with a plan, and then I'm going to do it. And I actually, this is a little bit embarrassing to admit, but I was watching Mamma Mia with my mom.
Show? Wow.
I literally fell asleep in that movie. In the theater, I fell asleep. So it's good to know it was life-changing for you.
Look, I said it's a little bit embarrassing that, you guys don't even know the embarrassing part. I'm not embarrassed about watching Mamma Mia. It's that I was watching with my mom and I looked at it and I'm like, man, that's really beautiful. I'm like, I want to move to Greece. And mom was like, yeah, okay. And I was like, no, that's what I'm going to do. So I waited tables for another 6 months, saved up money, and I moved to Greece it was about 6-7 weeks, not a long period of time.
Right.
But I went and I lived in Santorini on Parisa Beach, and just kind of took it in for.
So 6 months.
No, 6-7 weeks.
No. How long did you wait tables?
Oh, in total a year. But 6 months of saving for that specific. Yeah.
So did you write this down? Here we go with this.
Yeah.
Did you write this goal down, or how did you accomplish this?
Stay laser focused. That was it. I knew what I wanted to do. And the moment I know that I want to do something, I'm like, that's it. It's how do we get that done? Let's get that done.
So what's your protocol?
So first of all, I'm to this day also horrible at saving money. I am not good at saving money. It is not one of my best virtues. And it was tough because, especially as a wine drinker, you spend $50 here, $40 there, $80, and it adds up quickly. So I limited myself a lot in what I could spend. And I also had the good fortune to live with Sylvia and Myron.
Right.
So I wasn't paying rent. And that's it. I saved up money and ended up getting in a lot of credit card debt. Also, as a result, because as it turns out, I did not save up enough money when I got there. But so I went, and my mom was like, I cannot believe we should have never turned that movie on.
Damn, Mama Mia.
How was the experience?
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah, I would not take that back. And I paid off that credit card debt for years. Wouldn't take it back.
But you wouldn't take it back?
Oh, absolutely
What
not.
did you do over there? What was the day like?
Nothing, really. I just spoke to the locals. I was staying in this super shabby, just shitty. I'll just say it was like a dump.
Right.
This teeny tiny little hotel, but it was 1 block away from the beach.
Okay.
And had a pool that looked like a pool in the hood that basically is like drained and disgusting. But it worked. I think I was paying maybe $19 a night, 19 or 29. Wow. Very cheap. And I made it work. And I just spoke to locals. I tried to Well, I tried to learn how to speak Greek. Very difficult language to learn how to speak, especially when the alphabet is completely different. Good luck.
Right.
But yeah, I just kind of relaxed. And the moment I got back to the States, I was like, all right, I had fun. Time to get to work.
So you knew it was short term. You
Yes.
weren't planning
Yeah.
on, okay. So you knew 6 months or 6 weeks just to say I did it, and then I'm going to go back. So
Yep.
what did you do when you came back?
Came back and tried to figure out like what, financially, I just took actually ended up doing like really random, like odd jobs. And then went up to New York a couple months after that to look for apartments. Did not find an apartment.
Not $19 a day, by the way.
Yeah. Things had changed. Yeah.
Definitely not. Everything. And I made up this budget of $1,500 a month. I don't even know exactly where I came up with this number. Mind you, I had like $0 at this point.
Right.
But I'm like,
Start somewhere.
that's my budget. That's the most that I can spend. You can't get a lot in New York. Thank God, back then you could get a lot more than now. Now it's, and this
Now
was
you get a closet.
14 years ago. Wow. Now
Yeah, good luck.
maybe a closet like deep in like Brooklyn or deep in
Jeez.
Queens. I mean,
Different
but
world.
couldn't find one. And I'm like, well, but I'm ready to move. So I came back to Texas, ended up signing a lease online with a place that I never saw. And was like, this looks right. I mean, I'm ready to do it. We got to do this. Rented a U-Haul, drove up, and moved in. And didn't know a single person in New York, did not have a job. And I'm like, but I'm going to be a sports reporter because that's what I said I'm going to do.
Okay, so let's talk about the sports reporter dream, because this is a dream that you had. You didn't have a plan. Now you're in New York City. What was the first thing you needed to do?
First thing I did was the very next day, I went around and handed my resume to restaurants because I'm like, I need to, let's handle rent.
Right.
And I found a job that day and started working the following day. It was an immediate thing. And once that happened, and I knew that I had income coming in, then I started making calls. I called every single TV station, every agent, every newspaper, everything you could possibly imagine in like the New York metro, even places like outside of the city that did not have public transportation that went there, which didn't make any sense because I didn't have a car. So I don't know how I thought I was going to get there, but I called, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of places, left messages, wrote letters, sent emails, went knocking. And I don't even know if this would work anymore because everything is so, digitalized.
Digital,
but
yeah.
ended up meeting and on one of those calls, I kept calling this agency and they represented Mike and Mike. And I kept calling different people. And there was a gentleman there, Brian Jacobs, who I kept calling and I would leave voicemails. And on one day that I called, he answered. And he was like, "Are you the person that keeps calling me?" It's like, "Sure am." And he thought it was really funny. He was like, "I can't and I'm like, I just need 5 minutes of your time. If you can just give me 5 minutes." And he was like, "All right." And he gave me an appointment and I went up to Midtown in this fancy building, dressed like I thought a sports reporter would dress, and had a 5-minute meeting with him. And he's like, "All right, well, how can I help you?" And I told him, "Well, I want to be a sports reporter." And he's like, "Well, let me see your reel."
Yeah.
"Well, I don't have one."
That's my next question.
What is that?
"Well, what sort of experience do you have?" "Well, I don't have any." "Do you have at least like a college reel or something that were you like a couple of?" "No, I didn't do this in college." "All right." "Well," and I was like, "But I promise you, if you represent me, one day it'll be worth it." And he's like, "I can't represent you because I can't get you a job because you don't have any experience." And, credit to him because he just thought I think I was, this precocious, strange person, both of which are true.
Yes.
And he gave me some advice and he's like, I think that you should, really work on getting experience, getting, on-camera experience. This one is probably tough. Maybe start behind the camera and figure out, work your way in that way. And then when you're there, you can, kind of see it how people do. And he said, and I will never forget, he said that most, on-camera talents or reporters, whatever the case may be, don't have the behind-the-scenes experience. And it's like, it helps. You see things from a different perspective when you were a producer and you see how things are done. And obviously nobody was handing me a job. So that's kind of what I did, was go the back route. And he actually is my agent.
Now, Brian, really, today.
Brian helped me all along. The moment I kept in touch with him, he gave me advice when I got my first job writing. I let him know, and he was like, great, like, Liz, keep it up. Just a wonderful human being. And when I got to ESPN, I was like, guess what? And he's like, that's awesome. Kind of celebrated me all the way. And when I got...
No, we can't. Okay, so right there. So you leave Brian. How do you end up at ESPN? And was ESPN the first place you wrote to?
Hold on. Before we get to that, sorry, not to interrupt. I don't want to skate past what you did to get in front of Brian. Because, Darren,
that is true.
How many people do we talk to? Oh, I called twice and nobody answered. And I guess it's just not for me.
Hung up. Yeah. Just that was it. They heard no and that was it.
That's it. We just fold back. But the fact that you were so relentless, that's incredible. And I don't want anybody to miss that, because what you just said is pure gold. Yeah. For if you want something, you got to be relentless for it. And I love that. So kudos to you. That's awesome. If
you don't feel like you're the most annoying person in the world, you're not doing it right.
So true.
That's so good, man.
Okay, you go on. So you write down. Are you writing down places that you can get some study in, like ESPN, or why not like a local station?
I tried. I mean, granted, local was New York City, there, but then I was also just reaching out to I don't remember what the website is, but whatever, like, media job website. I applied to everything. I was like submitting here and there, and nobody. Nothing, just crickets. And my first, I guess, sports job, I started writing for collegefootballnews.com for the Big 12, because I waited on the man that would become my editor. And just like in chit-chatting with him, I was like, well, can I send you some samples? And so that was my first, sports job. And then from there, actually about a year later, I had been talking to the Giants. Okay. And they were starting to try to, get some on-camera work done, and they were building, their sets. And I had a couple of interviews with them, and it kind of seemed like there was no guarantee of a job, but it was very much almost leaning that way. Yeah. I felt good about it. I talked to them. I'd met people, and then the lockdown happened.
Yeah.
And I was obviously very upset. 'Cause I'm like, oh man. Yeah. And I spoke to them, and they were like, just hang on, let's see where this goes. Let's see how long this lasts. Nothing has been, canceled at this point or shut down. Obviously it went on a lot longer than everybody hoped. Yeah. So that project of theirs was the first to go, because why would you spend residual ink on something that, so that went away. And I spent that day, I remember I got wasted and cried for maybe like two whole days. It was maybe the whole weekend. And then the following Monday or whenever it was, I'm like, all right, that's it. I felt sorry for myself for this period, time to move on. And I started sending out applications, and randomly I came across ESPN, was looking for production assistants, and I submitted it. They called me 2 or 3 days later for an interview, a phone interview.
So you got in the car and drove all the way to Bristol?
No, it was a phone interview.
Oh, it was a phone interview. Okay.
And they caught me off guard, and I got very nervous. And I'm not one to usually get it, but I was like, oh my God, this is, and I couldn't even tell them. They at one point they quiz you on like just super basic sports stuff going on. And one was who played in the Super Bowl this year, and I don't remember who it was now but I believe it was the Giants and the Patriots, and I couldn't. And it had just happened. And I couldn't remember because I was so nervous. And I was like, Tom Brady is their quarterback.
Biggest football fan ever.
Brady is their quarterback.
Totally froze. And I hung up, and I'm like, there is no way they're calling me back. The guy ended up calling me back because he thought I was funny, that I was like, come on, tell me. failed that interview.
Right.
But yeah, that's how I ended up at ESPN.
So you didn't take a house down in ESPN. Did you stay in the city and drive to work, or did you?
No. I moved.
Okay, you did move to Bristol then.
I moved to Bristol.
Okay.
Well, first to Branford, which is right outside of New Haven,
right.
and then to West Hartford eventually.
Okay, first day on the job, ESPN. Was it what you thought it was?
Hell yeah, it was.
Yeah.
You kidding me? As like a sports fan growing up, and I think on my first day I was walking past the probably lost the Mike and Mike Studios, and Hulk Hogan was in and it's just like I grew up. It was just wild, and there was a lot of moments like that where you would just walk by and be like, oh hey, there's Jerry Rice, no big deal.
Yeah.
It was an incredible experience, and I have absolutely nothing but love for ESPN. They were very good to me. I got to meet you, Darren.
Yeah,
Isn't that
I was going to say, you said
her
Hulk
life
Hogan,
was
Jerry
ruined.
Rice. Then I was like, waiting.
Gotta keep them on their toes.
So did you? But your ultimate goal at ESPN was to get in front of the camera. I mean, that's what I remember having those conversations with you, and it wasn't. To me, when I was having those conversations, it felt like it wasn't moving fast enough for you. So tell everybody what you were actually doing at ESPN.
So I started off. It did not. What felt like it wasn't moving fast enough. Looking back on it, I'm like, that was a pretty
quick.
good pace. Yeah.
Right.
But then I was like, oh, I was itching. I started off prompting, so literally turning a wheel
Right.
for printing out scripts and turning a wheel for SportsCenter. But it's like everything. It is what you make it. I met you through it. I be like Butchergrass. There was a lot of people that I like made friends with. Sage Steele.
Yeah.
Purely because you're in front of these people.
Right.
You can choose to be like, oh, I'm only turning a wheel,
Right.
or you can be like, holy shit, like I'm turning a wheel for Sage Steele.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
And I talk to everybody.
Yes, you did.
To everyone. And that was actually when I met the most people, was prompting and doing, what appeared to be remedial tasks. But you're in front of these people, getting FaceTime, asking questions, making fun of them.
Yeah.
If the person in question is Darren Woodson.
Yeah, but there are so many. Look, I think this is the perspective I want to take away from this is that, Liz was doing the prompter, but it didn't stop her from networking and having conversation, because it wasn't just me. It was, Trey Wingo and Mark Schlereth and Teddy. It was everyone that was walking through that you were just having casual conversations with, and you fit. I mean, there was a confidence in there, and that's the part of it that I can remember about you, is that you didn't feel out of place. You never felt out of place. You felt like you belonged.
I think I did. Yeah, I guess I did. It also helps, honestly, that everybody was super, super kind. Like, I did not run across anybody that had a big ego, or that I thought, like, God, this guy is kind of a prick.
Right.
Everybody was really willing to have conversations with you. And maybe part of that is that you're stuck in Bristol, so you have nobody else to have conversations with but each other.
Right.
So maybe that, if it was in New York City, people had somewhere to go, maybe that wouldn't be as strong of a bond as, there was. But yeah, I talked to everybody and felt very comfortable, because again, everybody was very kind and warm.
Mm-hmm.
So did it run out? When did it run out? When did it get to the point where you're like, I need to go and grow. I need to get better at what I'm doing?
I think when I started working on Monday Night Football with Tirico and specifically I put together packages and film for Gruden, and would come up with like questions on, if you have like JJ Watt on the bus, what can we come up with? And I remember that Gruden was such a hard worker. And it was interesting because he actually was in Florida. He was never really in Connecticut, but the way he looked at things made me look at things a little different. And he would also just send us tapes sometimes.
Yep.
It was just fascinating. And that's kind of when I was like, all right, I got to figure out a way to get out of here. Because what he's doing, that's where it's at. And yeah, I mean, for months I sent out applications and wasn't receiving anything. And at that point too, because right before actually Monday Night Football, I guess moving backwards a little bit, I worked for the international side of ESPN. And that's where I made a tape, because the people I was working for Monday Night Football in Espanol before, American Monday Night Football. And they had like the little mini studios, and because all of their people are international, they had
Right.
the little green screen room
Yeah.
with, you know, you could put whatever you wanted in the background and then you could tape things. And by that point, because I had talked to so many people and formed friendships, they would sit there and just tape me talking.
So is that the first time you started getting in front of
Yep.
the camera? In the little small green room?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. With like it's like a little closet.
It's like those things are old
Oh, yeah.
little closet. They are closets, basically.
They're little closets.
Yeah.
And I would put up whatever that day's, you know, Sports Center or whatever, it was already loaded into the prompter. So I would just read it off and I would, you know, come up with some random things and try to do different things for my reel. I actually, and man, she probably thought I was a lunatic. I interviewed Michelle Kwan
Oh, yeah.
one time in that little room. And I had never interviewed anybody in my life. So she was my first interview.
How nervous were you to do that interview?
I was nervous. I was really nervous. I remember like my hands were a little sweaty, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I just shook her hand. It's sweaty." Like
She thinks I'm a loser.
and she was so nice. And I think she could definitely tell that I was
new.
very new, and she was so kind. She kind of guided me,
That's awesome.
you know, with it. And anybody else would have been like, "Who the fuck is this girl?
Right.
Why am I wasting my time here?" And she kind of held my hand through it. And the interview actually not horrible
Okay.
because of her.
I'd love
Right.
to see that reel. I would love that. We're going to dig that one up. We're going to dig that one up.
Yeah, I do got to ask, what were people telling you, and more importantly, what were you telling yourself being a female trying to excel in that that industry? Now, at this time, it's, you know, and especially nowadays, but what was it like then for females trying to excel in the sports industry?
Well, by that point, and I think what kind of opened the gate for a lot of, you know, young ladies is seeing Erin Andrews, you know, do it and be so, you
Amazing.
know, exactly, and also and just very personable. You know, she seemed like she was having a good time. That's not to say, I mean, like, you know, Pam Oliver, there was plenty of people that did it before, but she was doing it for for college game day at the time, and was just very vocal and very much a presence. And so that kind of, you know, if you were a young girl, you're like, oh, okay, well, she's, you know, at the time, what, maybe 23, 24, young.
Right.
Yeah.
And, oh, well, I can do that too. And I actually never wanted to be a sideline reporter. So for me, it was interesting because I wanted to be on the panel with the boys.
Yeah.
But most of those boys were, you know, are even professional athletes or they're men at the end of the day.
Right.
And I remember even when, you know, with Brian, with my agent, that he was like, yeah, but those roles don't really exist that much for women. Like, what about like the whole like Sports Center anchor thing? I'm like, I do not want to be a Sports Center anchor. I do not want to be an anchor. I don't want to be behind a desk and in one place. And at the time, it seemed like what you want doesn't really
Exist.
exist. It's not really out there.
Yeah.
So I guess I just believed that it would eventually be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, again, looking back on it, it's like, well,
And this was what year?
this was, let's see, 2011?
Okay. So
Is that
not
right?
that long ago.
2010 through 2011. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sage was there. So yeah. So there had been some growth and some movement.
Yeah, there definitely had been. It's just that you weren't, the women were either guiding the conversation as like
Right.
the in-between
Yeah.
between the arguments, or they were reporters, or they were, proper anchors.
Right. Okay. So you're there at ESPN. You're going through this process, and you're like, okay, I want to do this. I want to be in front of the camera. And the one question I always I needed to ask you, and I've been waiting to ask you this, is what was it like your first time in front of the camera? Like, you've been behind the camera, but this was like, now you're starting to get a taste. Was it something that you just this is what I want to do? Was it like a thrill to you, or was it like, it's a part of
Oh,
it?
it was really fucking exciting. Hell yeah, it was. Especially because in my case, it was in a little closet, so nobody was watching me.
Right.
So I was like, this is great. It's like you're playing dress up.
How many times did you get that?
You're playing dress up in a professional studio.
Yeah.
It was I had so much fun and I loved it. And it wasn't until I saw the footage afterwards that I was like, Jesus, I am really bad. I felt like I was having a great time and really showing personality. And you look at it and it's like, I look like a robot.
Right.
It's like, how is that?
So you do that.
God,
Same way.
I'm like, I'm horrible.
Horrible. How many times have I said that? I was like, God, I was God awful.
I hate me.
Yeah. So you do that, and then what's your mind going? What are you going through? I want to know. Was there something that you said, okay, I'm going to get in front of the camera here at ESPN, or I have to leave and go cut my teeth somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Can you imagine that? That'd be something. And I think at some point, honest to God, maybe it was my vanity, but I thought, well, maybe, like a tiny part of like a show, maybe
Right.
a
Did
segment.
you ever have that conversation with ESPN? Was there anything, any dialogue?
Yes. One of the heads of talent there, Maureen, she kind of helped me, through everything. And I don't even know why, again. And guided me and would look at my reel and be like, this is horrible, take this out. And she always, and I remember one thing she told me is that I would sometimes smile too much for no reason. She's like, you can't just smile, especially as a woman, for no reason. Why are you smiling? Well, I don't know, to look warm. No, it looks like you're like a Barbie doll up there smiling. It doesn't look authentic. It doesn't look genuine. Smile when you have a reason to smile. Like, okay, well, I thought I was trying to look friendly because I know everything. And yeah, it just, you laughing at I know everything. Fuck you, Darren.
You go, Maureen. I'm glad she checked your ass back there too. So
Continue the story.
continue. I'm sorry.
I don't even know what I was saying now. I'm too busy cursing you out.
I think talking about the transition and you talked to Maureen about being on camera and realized that probably wasn't going to happen there. So
Yes.
where did you go from there?
Oh boy, from there.
Yeah, where did you go from there? West
Abilene,
Texas.
Texas.
Bingo.
K-Tap News.
Yes.
Did you really?
Yes.
That's my
how I was-
hometown.
yeah. Also, I wanted to
I know.
surprise you with it.
I was listening to. I heard that and I was like, this poor bastard. It's all about Abilene. God.
I remember you now. I'm just kidding.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Anyway,
Oh, that's God's town right there, Abilene,
God's
Texas.
country.
yeah, it is.
Prettiest town I ever seen, according to George Strait.
George Strait is many things. The king, for sure.
The king.
But this makes him a liar. It most certainly.
Well, let's talk about Abilene. How long were you there?
Too long.
Too long.
Yeah.
Too long.
Yeah.
10 months. 10 months too long.
10 months too long.
I remember the conversation. I
gotta
remember
go
the
to Abilene.
conversation. And we were talking on the phone.
Oh,
she was
man.
like, I can't believe I'm out here doing this shit. There's nothing but dirt and
God. And as somebody that loves New York, think about it
Yes.
from that
Oh, my
perspective too. Not
gosh.
even just like
Yeah. I can't.
It was, you know what? It was certainly the right place to learn because I made a ton of mistakes, and you need to make the mistakes,
yeah.
and you want to make the mistakes in a place where, no offense, but nobody
was
cares.
watching.
Yeah. 6 people are watching.
6 people. Actually, a lot of people watch the news in Abilene. You should know because there's nothing else going on.
There's nothing else to do.
So
Yeah.
they want to know if,
True.
if they have a pool of standing water, how many mosquitoes are going to
I'm not going to sit
Swarm
here
them in
and
the
let you two
summertime.
keep talking about my hometown like this.
what is the best way to prevent
Notice I don't live there
mosquitoes?
anymore.
But you know what? You were writing your own material, right? I mean,
And you-
you
Oh,
did
yeah.
everything.
And you weren't doing sports, you were doing anything.
No.
Okay.
It was no, I would pitch stories in the morning and I would go out to
Come on.
Brownswood. It was Brownswood. Is that right?
Brownwood, get it right.
Brownwood, okay.
Brownwood.
God, this is just an X against my memory. No offense to Brownwood, but I would drive out there because that was my beat.
right?
So not only was Abilene was like New York City compared to Brownwood.
Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
And that was another like 35, 40 minutes away. So I would have to drive there and to shoot about, stories about mosquitoes or God knows like what fucking else I would have to come
I'm
up
about to
with.
log off this set right now. I'm feeling so disrespected.
It's, you know what? Local, they don't get enough love. It is a really hard job.
Yeah.
Because if there's nothing going on, like what are you talking? And you
Yeah.
have to shoot something every day,
Right.
period. So you would come up with your story. You would go out there. I would shoot it myself. And then I would, do my own stand up and flip the little camera around to try to like get myself in the shot and move
geez.
around. And then I would go back and edit it.
Oh, you had to do
yeah.
Everything.
Man, you did that.
God.
See, That is something. You really had to learn you knew a lot. You learned a lot when you were at ESPN. And that's what's so special about it. You went to ESPN, you learned a lot about there. And then you probably took some of that to Abilene with you. And now you had to do, because I knew you could write. Everyone knew that you were a damn good writer. I mean, that was where you started, right? I mean, you started writing early. But now you're in front of the camera. Now you have to do the editing. You have to do a little bit of everything. Do you think that really, pushed you to the next level as well?
It gave me, I have a shit ton of respect for editors and producers for that. Right? It is so much harder than people think it is. And you're constantly in this very short time span of things need to get done right now because they have to get done. It's tough. And and so, but I learned how to do it, and I'm also technologically inept. So that was a struggle to figure out how to just edit, but did it. And then eventually I started anchoring the weekends, which was a whole different story. So then I was, formally on camera, but I also was the producer of the show. So I was literally the only person there besides, the people that were running the board.
What news station are we talking about, by the way?
KTAB News.
Oh,
the number one
news station in all of Abilene, Texas.
That's right.
Wow, and the big country.
That's right. Shout out.
Channel 10.
Shout out KTAB News.
Who was there before you? I just got a quick question. Who was there doing this before you? How fast did they leave?
The turnaround is pretty quick. I would say a max of 2 years.
Dude, you need to stop. Nobody's talking trash about Phoenix right now.
I just asked a question. Hey, just ask questions. So
you okay?
10 months.
I'm hurting a little bit right now. I'm not. My heart's feeling attacked right now.
He's always talking about God's country. I just thank you for putting it all in a box. So 10 months there. Are you reaching out? Those 10 months. Are you reaching out back to New York City, or who are you reaching out to?
I was actually under contract, so I knew I can't, maybe at a year I can look to maybe leave at a year and a half, but I'm more or less stuck. And then I started doing some football coverage, and West Texas football, high school football is a big deal. So that was cool. And I was actually on the path to becoming the proper sports reporter for them instead of just dipping in, and dabbling, because the sports reporter that was there, Alyssa Orange, she left. And so I'm oh, all right, and they were preparing me for it. And then, and what turns out to be the best, tale of fortune, really, sort of. So I ended up, a few months before I left, I ended up getting this lunatic stalker that, do you remember him? He was a retired police officer that was forced into early retirement because he started losing his mind a little bit and refused to take his medication.
Yikes.
So he was not necessarily the safest person to be around. And at first I thought it was, honestly, I took it very, how, I'm whatever. I was very lighthearted about it. And then weird things started happening. He started sending me old T-shirts of his and wrapping them in bows and dropping them off at the TV station and waiting for me outside of the TV station and sending me, trophies, very strange things. And then this man walked across my yard once, and Eli, who is my chocolate lab, the most sweetest boy, almost attacked him. And the only reason he didn't is because I grabbed him in time and I was holding on to the railing. Otherwise, he would have broken through. And I was really embarrassed. And a few weeks later, the police brought me in because it kind of escalated a little bit. And I had never seen a picture of him. And they showed me a picture of him. And I was like, holy shit, that was the guy that was on my yard.
Wow.
And had it not been for Eli, it was a wild experience. He started texting me saying things like, I'm going to go to my ex-wife's house and get my guns back and come to your house. Really scary shit. So I actually had police officers follow me around for weeks that would just stationed outside my apartment and would follow me around to make sure that I was okay, because they were very concerned that he was very unstable. That ended up being my get out of jail free card, my get out of Abilene card.
Yeah. Oh, really? You use that for your contract, or?
Yeah, because it was all completely true, and he was showing up, and I became, I felt. It was a lot. Right. It became a lot. And then I'm by myself in this small town. This guy was one of the best marksmen in the state of Texas. I'm I need to get the fuck out of here. This is some scary shit. And coincidentally, some girl that a friend of a friend of a friend who I met once years before, I actually don't even know how she had my email, sent me an email and was like, hey, I just saw this open up. You should apply for this. And the New York Jets were looking for a reporter. And I thought, all right, whatever. Like, I have nothing to lose. I submitted it. They were doing a deal with monster.com at the time. And I think there was maybe like 5,000 or 6,000 people that applied to it because they publicized it. And it went from 5,000 to 1,000 to 200 to 3 that they brought. Like, they flew me to New Jersey, and from 3 to 1.
Wow.
Damn, look at you.
Wild.
From a random email.
From a random email from a random person that I hadn't seen in years. Like, just fate.
Wow.
So you're back in New York. Get you back in New York.
Yes.
Okay.
Back in New York, doing the reverse commute to New Jersey.
Okay.
So the Jets, how long does that last? And what's that like?
It was just a season. So it lasted only a season. And that was like, what my contract was. And they weren't sure. They were trying things out. So they had a guy there who'd been there for, I think it was like 13 years before they decided to do on-camera stuff. And so it was myself and him. It was tough. I'll be honest. Like, I have nothing but love for the organization themselves, but he did not want a sidekick.
Yeah.
He
wanted to be a soloist on this.
And in some way, like, it makes sense. He's been there for 13 years, and here comes this like random, chick that's just like, hey, I'm really excited to be here. Like, that's got to be annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. So where'd you go after that?
So from there, I went to, I kind of stopped reporting altogether for a bit. One of the players that I became friends with in the locker room, David Nelson, who was originally from Dallas, talking about Dallas and Fort Worth, we became friends, and him and his brother were starting a nonprofit out of Port-au-Prince.
Right.
Yeah. So I stopped. He offered me a full-time job because I was doing just like volunteer stuff for it just because I was interested in it. And that turned into my becoming the director of operations for I'm Me. So I split my time between Port-au-Prince, Dallas, and New York.
Wow. How'd you like that? How was it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I remember being involved with some of that. Yeah. Yeah. No, but then so let's go. Let's speed up then. So you go through that process, and then is it in your mind that you want to get back in front of the camera at some point? And how does that go? And what leads you to Barstool, and how does that come about?
Yeah, I think that first of all, everybody wants to save the world.
Right.
It is very hard to do. And it was the most fulfilling job. And also at the same time, I've never felt like a bigger failure. It was like you would help, one kid, but then there's thousands and thousands that you have not. And at some point it became, I guess, my ego wanting to just solve and fix everything. I'm a fixer, so I'm like, I want to fix this. And it was hard to not be able to really change the landscape in the way that you hope. And a little bit, it was tough. It was tough. Did a lot of good, not nearly enough, because we can never, do enough. So it was hard. And people that work in nonprofits, man, well, they don't get enough love, because that is a hard job.
Yeah.
But I did miss, sports and being on camera. And so I came back and started looking at jobs. Brian helped me get a job, and I ended up with Sports Nation, freelancing for them. That eventually turned into Comcast in New England, and then MSG Network in New York, and then Barstool.
So you bounced from each, or was it doing the same? So now is your role the role that you've been looking for? Has that now been created?
So then it was, because that was more or less what I was doing at Sports Nation to begin with. It was just like talking shit, essentially.
About what you do best. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, Sports Nation had a role for you. We need someone that can talk shit. Call Liz.
Just talking shit.
Yeah.
At the time, it was about fantasy football, but that's the great thing about fantasy. You can talk shit because it's a game.
Right.
I mean, football is also a game, obviously, but this is really a game about a game. And at MSG Network, I think, was really the time that it was more set up in that way. But it was hard because it was myself and a comedian, and it was his show, and I was kind of like his sidekick.
Right.
And it kind of, it's hard to have a shit talker on a show when you, so I had a few, small segments, on the show, I think that my role was minimized a little bit in the process too, just because I think that it's when you have too many voices, one's got to go.
Right.
And then I had actually been talking to ESPN for a bit about ESPN about radio, and this was during the transition over to Golick and Wingo, and we were just talking about maybe there going back, maybe hosting Snapchat there,
right.
And so I was interviewing. I went out to Bristol. We were talking about it. It ended up falling through. They laid off.
A ton of people.
A ton of people, and obviously you can't bring in somebody new when you're laying off such a large. So it ended up not happening, and that was over. I think it was the day before Thanksgiving that they told me, like, it's just and that was Trey Wingo who brought me in into the mix for there. So lots of love for Trey Wingo, and I was very sad. I was like, and it was the next day was Thanksgiving or the day after, and I was like, well, I don't have anything to be thankful for. This year. Right. I was like very poor
man,
me.
That's rough. That's rough. Yeah.
And 2 days later, my agent, by that point, Brian was formerly my agent, called about Barstool.
And what'd you think?
And I was like, I didn't know that much about Barstool. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Like, I'm not, I've never been a big internet person in general, which is funny. Like, you bring in, the biggest sports website in America, and you bring in somebody that's like, I don't know, I don't follow trends, and so which I think was a blessing, because I had no, there was no sense of like, oh, it's Dave Portnoy, oh my God, like, I was just like, hey, and I think the first thing I said to him when I walked, maybe I should, maybe that's the key, is just be rude to people when you first meet them. Just make some sort of sarcastic asshole comic. Because I think when I met, and at that point I interviewed, that was maybe my third or fourth interview, and I walked into his office and it was just a shithole. There was stuff everywhere, boxes, papers, clothes. And I walked in and I was like, well, you didn't have to clean up for me. And again, I think if I really knew the magnitude of who Dave Portnoy, I wouldn't have said anything maybe. But instead I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And he was like something about like, a messy office is like a clean mind or some shit. And I was like, whoever.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
I was like, no.
Who is this guy?
But yeah, and that's, so I went in not knowing, and also having zero expectation, because I wasn't sure how serious they were. They were starting up Sirius XM, and that's what they were hiring for. And initially it was for the morning show, and then that moved. And then the next time I came in, it was for the Dallas Braden show. And then through that, I ended up somehow interviewing with Kevin with KFC.
Right.
And then I came back, and that's when Dave brought me into his office, and we were talking about things, and he said something about like, all right, so when would you be able to move to California? And I was like, what? And he's like, well, yeah, to do like the show with Dallas Braden. And I was like, I'm not moving to LA. And he's like, what? I thought that they wanted you, like that they brought you in for the show in LA. And I was like, I mean, I don't, and this is the Barstool difference right here. And I was like, nobody said anything to me about moving to California. I am not interested in moving to LA. And he was like, well, shit. Well, I don't know about like having somebody, remote and virtual doing a show with it. He's like, I don't know. Then, and I was like, well, I interviewed, I did a taping with Kevin. If, you want to, he was like, oh, all right. He was like, well, how did that go? And I was like, I think it went really well. And he was like, all right, well, I'll take a listen to that. And that's how I became.
That's amazing.
That's how I got on Barstool Radio with them.
Yeah.
So you had, well, why not? Why not go to LA?
I don't like LA.
You don't want to go there, huh?
Absolutely not.
You hear that, Elizabeth? Yeah. Elizabeth's like, that's her city.
Elizabeth, no offense. I'm sorry.
You shit on Abilene. You shitting on
LA. What's next?
Damn, I'm not making any friends here today. That's for sure. I'm sorry.
It's all good. But no, talk to us about Barstool, because I am interested in the internet world, and Barstool is a fascinating case study because, and I'm not telling anything you don't know, but you get your traditional sports media, Fox, ESPN, CBS, all that. Barstool's breaking the mold. So what's the environment like? Give us the inside story on what Barstool is like.
Well, Dave chains us to our desk and makes us do inappropriate acts because that's what Dave Portnoy does to women. So they would like for you to.
Right.
No, it is an open environment for you to do whatever the hell you want, which is incredibly rare and also comes with its good thing, the good and the bad. There's no one pressuring you to do anything, which also means that you can fall back and be like, I'm gonna just chill.
Yeah.
Right.
The opposite is that if you want to do something, they'll help you figure out a way to do it. And you can.
So you're bringing the creative.
Yes.
And they're listening. So
Yep.
the ideas are flowing. That's awesome that they give you that platform to throw it out there.
Yeah, and they'll tell you this sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
It probably sucks.
Yeah.
Right.
Straight up.
Is this
Yeah.
a team? I know Dave is the figurehead, but is this a team of folks that you're going through?
Yes and no. Everybody works so it's more the idea of if you have a show idea, go tape an episode or two and then come with that with that episode, and you would show, Dave or Jen or Erica, and it would kind of, you build your little nest of who I need to speak to make this happen kind of
Right.
idea. But it's also, it is a small company, so you know each other pretty well as a result. And I think that they do a really good job of interacting with one another, not just really from a talent standpoint. I know Big Cat, for example, I've gone to him many times to just be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And he's a great listener and gives great advice. And he's also somebody that's been there from the beginning.
Right.
So while there's no necessarily rigid system, which has its good and its bad. I'm a very organized person and an over communicator. I am probably too much of a communicator there because I'm like, well, what about this? What about that? But you're free to do as you wish, which is incredibly rare. And
Right.
there's also I think I'm very fortunate in the sense that I got to know Dave through radio. So he doesn't feel like my boss to me. He feels like somebody that I argue with.
Right.
Yeah.
And we argue about everything. But I have an immense amount of respect for what he has built. And also I trust him completely.
Yeah.
And I think that's...
And I think that shows. And it shows through the entire, I think with the talent that there is, you watch Dave on TV or
the pizza reviews are the greatest 3 minutes.
They are,
content.
man. They're classic. I don't know how many times I've died laughing just watching the pizza reviews, but there is a dialogue between the talent. He doesn't feel like he's your boss. He feels like he's one of your colleagues when you guys are on air, when everyone's on air with him. So that's a lot of respect for him as far as his leadership capabilities as well.
And he also, I'm still very amazed. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Barstool Fund, but that's something.
We both
we
donate to
are.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, no,
that's us.
we did
do.
want to talk to you about that for sure. Yeah.
But that's an example of the person that he is. He first of all says everything that's on his mind. So that's obviously not going to please people.
Sure.
Right.
As I would know, it makes a lot of, you make a lot of enemies in the process. But he finds a way to do things and do them well. And even the fun, most recently, and I was just talking to somebody about it today, so it's still kind of on my, fresh in my mind. He said he was going to do it and he did it. And we're, almost 40 million in. And who the hell would have thought? I didn't think that, I volunteered to help with it at the beginning because that's something that's very close to me and having waited tables for so long, but also that part of me, the nonprofit side is still very active. And I thought all right, well, maybe we'll get a few million if we're lucky. Oh man, it'd be nice to get 3 or 4, whoa. And it just on and on. And I'm I can't, this guy.
Yeah.
It just.
Well, the machine that's been created, no matter what you guys do, it just explodes. And so for people that are listening and may not be familiar, what is the Barstool Fund? What's the purpose of it? Tell us a little bit more about it.
So the purpose of it is to help small businesses get through this period of lows. Obviously, the government has been fucking worthless with helping businesses stay afloat during a time when they're shut down, or if they're open, they're at 25% capacity. Whatever the case may be, people are afraid to dine out. This whole, which completely understandable. But if you're going to set these limits, at the same time, then you need to provide support because these are the people that are helping keep this country moving. This is the bread and butter of America.
Yeah.
and you're telling them that they're not really that important.
Right.
Because we'll just leave you alone. We're going to cut off your legs and your arms. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
And so the Barstool Fund is interesting and also in the way that we pick businesses, and that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been going through all the businesses, and you tell us how much you need. Obviously, we do our background and we vet companies, and we promise you that for as long as you need this or until this pandemic is over, you will have that money. So if it's you need $8,000 a month to stay alive, then
we're going to guarantee
here's $8,000 until
right,
whatever X period it ends up being.
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of businesses too, and I've already seen a lot of businesses come back and say, you know what, we've received funds for 2 months, and that's enough. Thank you so much.
Oh,
See,
wow.
that is something.
Yes.
That's it. To literally to send an email to somebody that's like, I just needed that $12K for 2 months. Now, like, there's other people that need it more. Give it to them. I just needed to get my head above water for a second. That's when it's like,
with
that's
so
what's
much
up.
negativity that we've experienced over the last couple of years, whether it be social media issues or, COVID and all. I mean, just to hear those stories and to see those stories, like, I don't know. I get the thrill out of them. We have this little thread within our own, the Darren Woodson show, just a text message, and Ben will send out some of those highlights, and they're like, I mean, it's tearjerking because this is people. This is their livelihood. This is the only way they survive. And there's so many times that the restaurants or those little small restaurants, how integral they are in those communities.
Oh
just
yeah,
for
big
relief, time. Just for relief.
Yeah.
For people to come in and sit down and have breakfast or whatever. But it's just it's so warm to see the reaction, and they're real reactions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's been just a blessing in so many ways, and also just a nice thing to look at. It just it feels good to see people who have worked their entire lives to build this thing. And to still have it, and to be able to have it, and to be able to have somebody, because I think at the end of the day, what we all want is to be seen.
Yeah.
By our partners, by people in our lives, whatever the case may be. And if this is your business, like, you just want somebody to say, I see you, you're struggling, we got you.
Yeah.
And their stories are completely authentic and genuine. In some cases, they've had the business for 70, 60 years. And just the idea of COVID coming in and wiping out, 6 decades of memories and of history is just, it's just wild. And I hope that also from the consumer standpoint that we all appreciate those businesses a lot more, if nothing else, coming out of this. Because, birthdays, get together, good times, that's where you have them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I want to amend something I said. I said the pizza reviews are the best piece of content. No, actually, it's these Dave FaceTimes with,
But those pizza reviews are hilarious.
They're hilarious.
All right, we're not here to give Dave all the compliments in the world. Let's move on.
Let's take back to you. What's the future look like? Where are you headed personally? Where's Barstool headed? What's the future look like?
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, obviously, like, I'm at Barstool and I will be at Barstool. I'm under contract. That there's not, nothing of that nature. But what show I'm working on, trying to figure out like what my next show is. I don't know yet. I have some ideas in the works. I'm playing with a few things.
Fourth co-host of the Darren Woodson Show.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's bring the Darren Woodson Show. We got to change the name though. I mean, nobody wants to.
Nobody wants to
hear
Darren.
Yeah, you watch.
Let's bring it over to Barstool.
Blasphemous.
Basically, this is my next show, is what I'm trying to say.
Love it. We have in all seriousness, we're thinking like, should we continue with the Darren Woodson Show? Should we change the name? Maybe the Ben Gibbs Show? I don't know.
No, that's not happening. But we have always talked about that. But look,
it's not about us.
Look,
back to you.
And I don't want it
Please
to
don't
be.
name it Boys Will Be Boys.
No.
Please don't name it. Let me just go ahead and put that out there. I see the goddamn stars shining at you behind your head.
Maybe the Packer Killers
Destruction. Hey, look, I would say this. I know, look, I love you and I've known you forever, but I've also known, and we've gone down the Barstool way, but I also know that you've had some things in your life that have taken place that a lot of people probably don't know. There was an accident. You had an accident where you were hit by a car. How's that situation gone on, and what's the recovery like?
It was very humbling, I will say. And I say that not in I'm saying it to sound cool. I say it in a way that, like, I think that I've always been a very go, 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 go person.
Yeah.
And I was forced to slow down because I couldn't walk. I mean, it really was that simple. I could not do all these things that constantly keep me busy and moving. And when you sit with yourself in silence for that long, your brain starts to, like, initially really go at you. I think for the first couple months, I was like, oh, this is nice. I'm doing, you know.
So let me set it up. So you're in New York City. You end up getting hit by a car. You saved Eli.
Moved Eli out of the way a little bit. Thank God. Oh, my God.
Now look at you.
I might have killed that.
You
I
saved
might have
you.
killed
No,
the-
you saved him. It's a
No,
beautiful
she
thing.
saved
It's true.
Eli.
No,
It's true.
Talking about
With
an
the
Abilene
stalker.
with a stalker.
Oh, the stalker. Yeah, you're right.
That's
You're
right. That's
Y'all
right.
are bonded, man.
Oh, he saves me every day. My
Yeah.
sweet boy.
Oh my gosh.
Shut up, Darren. Darren is not an Eli fan.
So that happens, and how long were you in the hospital?
So I was only in the hospital for about 2 days. And
After being hit by a car.
yes.
Wow.
Things were stabilized in a way. And so then when I went to the orthopedic surgeon the first go around, he was like, oh, well, the way things are, it should be around 2 to 3 months. And I was like, if they're telling me 2 to 3 months, I'm going to do it in 4.
Oh, yeah.
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Four
Yeah,
weeks,
no,
not 4 months.
I'm tracking with you.
gonna say,
No.
That would
Wait
go
a
hand in
minute.
hand.
They say
Hold
2,
up.
I'm staying here 6.
I'm like, I'm going to do it in 4 weeks.
I'm milking this thing.
Hell yeah. And I thought, please, it's fine. It's fine. Things will heal. Things will go back where they're supposed to go back. And it did not work out that way. It was actually extremely frustrating because things are moving in reverse, which doesn't usually happen.
Right.
And even like I was seeing so many doctors, and then it's the idea of we don't really know what's happening or why this is happening. We don't know. And I don't live well in a I don't know phase when there are, or at least when you think, hey, if it's my, lower back, what do you mean? This is like, it's not some like rare disease no one's ever heard of. Like, why, where is it? Just fix it. Let's go.
Right.
It does not work out that way, or it did not for me anyways. And it was like every MRI, well, things aren't really, I don't
Feeling
know
the
what
same
to,
way.
yeah.
Right.
It was very frustrating, especially because I was very confident going out of the gate that like, we're going to be fine. We're going to get through this. And then it's like you get to a certain point too where you start to hear bad news so often, and then you start to fall into a little bit. I fell into a hole for sure. And I think that was maybe, even like with everything that's happened in my life, that this was really the only place that I can look to and say, like, I lost myself a little bit.
You were vulnerable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it took you what? How many months did it take you to finally try to get out of this? And how did you come out of this?
So it was about 8 months of not walking solo. With crutches. I could get around. But it's like everything hurt. And then I think I was very resistant to everything, and resentful of like not initially for that, 8-9 month period of I'm sitting in this chair and it hurts. And it would like start to piss me off because I'd be like, why can't I just sit in this chair? I just want to sit in this chair. I'm standing, it hurts. Like and as somebody that, I was fortunate enough to never be in any other situation where my body was not where I wanted it to be. And it became really frustrating because I couldn't, this was before COVID, and I couldn't go out to eat because I couldn't sit in a restaurant chair.
Yeah.
And I would, bring around my little cushion and try sometimes, and I would have to leave because it's like, I can't sit for this long. And it was just a nightmare. It was tough, and I felt weak, and I'm not good at feeling weak or vulnerable, as we were talking. Like,
did you have any support? Was anyone there to support you?
I mean, the thing is my family is here.
Right.
So, my mom would come, and my aunt would come, and she was a flight attendant, so she was there more often just because she would fly into, LaGuardia or whatever the case. But for the most part, I was like, besides having Eli, thank God, I was totally alone. And it throws everything off too, because your routine, like example, like with Eli, best part of my day is like getting up and walking him.
Yeah.
Couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then it's like all of those little things just start to add up, and for a while, like the first few weeks, I couldn't bathe myself. And it's like having to ask people to,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like, that sucks. And it also puts you again in a place of It's up to somebody else to take care of you, and I'm not somebody that's very good at being at allowing people to take care of me.
Yeah. So what did you get out of that, Liz? That whole
what did that teach
situation? What did it teach you?
To slow down a little bit. I think that I guess I needed to slow down, and it took a car to hitting me to be able to understand that. But yeah, I think now I was already very much into learning and growing as a person, and super into, meditating and just figuring out how can I be better? How do I reach that self-fulfillment top of the pyramid? And this was a silencer. And sometimes you need silence. And I was able to deal with a lot of things in the past, through my therapist, which I had already been seeing before. But it brought up all of these feelings that I thought that I had dealt with. I'm like, well, I've been in therapy for years. And it's like all of a sudden everything kind of came up at once. And so when you're like in a hole of shit, you got to sit there and look around and be like, how do I see these things, acknowledge them, and then say goodbye?
That's awesome,
man.
So you want to give?
You guys want to get hit by a car?
Hell no, girl.
I've had
hell no. We both been former athletes. We've been hit enough.
Yeah,
not by a damn car.
I will say before we do have a final question we ask every guest, but Elizabeth had a question that she wanted to make sure we touch on, and you don't have a microphone, but you tell me and I'll ask it just so our audience can hear it.
Because I realized I don't like tennis, so yeah. But what would you tell another aspiring person, how do they get into this as a young girl? Especially now that CBS, NBC, they're cutting all their sideline positions. So now it's kind of like, where do we go from here? When all those positions that were usually reserved for women aren't really available to them.
Yeah. And just for people that didn't hear that, what is your advice, or what do you say to the women's movement in sports? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I would say the plus of the situation that we're in is, while companies like ESPN are laying a lot of people off, you do have your phone and you do have the internet, and there are tons of people that are out there going viral, doing really stupid shit. I think that also the reverse is and also can be true, is just take yourself to a game, if you want to be a signer, take yourself to a game and start taping and put it up. And there have been people that have become famous from, like the guy who was doing his stand up in whatever small town, and the bee or whatever came flying at him.
Yeah.
But obviously that's just to go viral.
Was that the brother that was in?
Yeah. What was it?
Was it Tampa? Was it Florida or something? He was like, oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
But there is an internet, build it yourself. This was also that was definitely not true when I started. There was you couldn't there was no platform to, I guess you could put it on YouTube, but that wasn't really. Now people are on their phones entirely too much, in my opinion, but they are on their phones all the time. Build your own, brand and get other people involved. If there's other people that want to do it with you, I think that's how people get seen nowadays. And I'm a little bit out of touch, to be honest. I'm not like one of the cool kids, but I feel like that's how people now do get discovered in a lot of ways. I know that Barstool brings in people that have, for the most part, that have done things on their own and that have just built a following from, doing whatever they feel like doing. So I think that, and we'll come back too. Everything is cyclical. At some point, networks will they'll figure out a way to kind of incorporate the internet in a way that Barstool has been so successful. And I think that TV is not going away anytime soon.
Right.
And it will come back. It's just a matter of people expecting things to be different and appreciating the differences.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's advice for anybody. Obviously not just women. And what I'll take away from this conversation is your relentless spirit.
Yeah.
And you had a dream, you had a goal, and you were going to go get it no matter what. And I love that. And I love that relentlessness that you show. So last question, unless you have anything else.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So we just went through your whole journey. Awesome story. If you could go back to any point in your life and tell yourself one thing, not necessarily go change anything, but if you could just tell yourself one thing, where do you go and what do you tell yourself?
I would go back to, well, first of all, I would like to say that I was extremely unfortunate looking from like the age of 6 to 14. And people always say like, oh yeah, like everybody was awkward looking in middle school. I'm like, no. This isn't like a matter of like awkwardness. This is like, I had family members that today tell me like they were nice to me when I was young because I was so ugly. So
they were looking at you like, damn.
Exactly.
I think the way you said it though, extremely unfortunate looking. I'm going to start using that.
But it like at the same time, I was like, well,
yeah, Bill is about to
fine. Do you want me to
explode.
wait?
Don't worry about it.
Fine. Don't
Play
worry
through
about
adversity.
it.
Let's go.
but that's also why I watch sports so much too. And and my friends were all boys.
Right.
Because nobody was hooking up with me, that's for sure. I mean, granted, I was 13, 14 when I'm talking about there. But as a result, like I think guys also, when you have your little crushes when you're in like 5th grade, nobody had a crush on me. They all wanted to be my friend.
Right.
So growing up, my friends were all boys.
Been there.
For that reason.
Right.
And in that way, it worked out like, long term is because you can just go up to random, football players like Darren Woodson and
Right.
insult them out of the gate and feel comfortable doing that.
It's all good.
So I guess I would go back and I would say trust. Trust that everything will work out exactly as it should.
Love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because I feel that now, but I did not necessarily then. And I think it would have been nice for little Liz to know.
Yeah.
Trust. It will be okay.
Yeah. And it has been okay.
And it has
I've
been
watched
okay.
you grow for so long, Liz. I mean,
11 years, I guess.
11 years being at ESPN and knowing that there was a hunger and a thirst, and you've been unrelenting, and it's just I'm glad we got you on the show because there's so much that today that came out, so much positive that came out of this today. So keep doing what you're doing on Barstool.
Yeah.
Keep growing. We're gonna keep
love
on
it.
watching.
Thank you, Darren.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. And Abilene.
Oh
And thanks to Abilene.
Just
for
remember
my
the prettiest
stars.
town you've ever seen. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks.